Many years ago, I've been watching the odd American football. I wouldn't say match, but parts, fractions of them, and I thought it was a bit of a mess. Two large group of big men bumping into each other, throwing a ball around. Not only did I find it extremely interesting that they would call it football, considering that in an entire match the ball is actually touching a foot about 10 times. But of course, being ignorant as I was, I dismissed it outright. Then one night, quite late, I was randomly flicking through the limited amount of channels we had back then, and I bumped into an American football match that was about to start. I almost instantaneously considered flicking away, but the Danish commentator was so passionate and so detailed in the description of the rules and the tactics used and things like that I sort of got hooked, much to my own surprise, and I ended up actually following a full season, only to see the team I was cheering for getting absolutely crushed in the Super Bowl. Oh well. My point being that despite the fact that I still find it bizarre that they call it football, I gained a respect for the sport. It's a lot more nuanced than just a bunch of big guys clashing into each other. Of course, this game is obviously inspired by American football, or football, whatever you call it. I call it American football because we know normal soccer football as football, because you actually kick the ball, ball against football. Makes sense. I digress. That was an attempt at a joke, which probably failed. Brutal Sports Football. Brutal Sports was a mini-series kind of thing that encompassed various different normal sports. And I remember following development of some of them, not necessarily because I was hugely interested in the games, but because it was part of the magazines that I read. So, I mean, you don't buy a 100-page magazine to read 12 pages. No, maybe you do, but I don't. I have a passion for reading, so I was reading, and I was following development. I can't remember whether it was this game or one of the other ones, whatever. But I have to admit, the premise didn't particularly excite me. You take a normal sport that everyone knows about, not everyone, but most people knows, and then you decide to have the two teams playing against each other be allowed to rip into each other more so than it would be allowed in any real sport. Not only that, you show different power-ups on the field, such as swords and bombs and all sorts of other goodies that can both hamper your enemy or your opponent, I think it's called, but also yourself. Because, I mean, there's no fun in having power-ups that's exclusively good for you. But then, of course, the end result is measured in goals scored, but also in hits taken. It's a bit bizarre, because of course all players have a health bar of some description, and once you drain the health bar of an opposing player, he will probably see his own head fly. Well, he will probably not see his own head fly off, but you will see his head fly off, whether he was stabbed with a sword, hit with a bomb, or kicked in the shin, which is a bit bizarre. The thing is, though, and I think that is for me definitely an important factor, is it any fun to play? We can go into detail about that. For reference, and I want to point this out, I played the first game semi-seriously, and the second game I was just trying, okay, let's see what happens if we just mash. basically just mashing. Don't think, just mash and see what kind of game you get out of it. Of course, if you know anything of American football, you will probably realize that this is a partial adaptation of said sport, because of course normally you have lines of guys trying to block the other team's line of guys even, and let the quarterback and catcher and whatever else they're called do what they're doing. And of course you don't actually gain yardage in this. You either score a touchdown or goal, whatever, or you don't. And you always start from the middle, it doesn't matter who. And of course, because this is an adaptation and a brutal one to stay in theme, once a goal is scored, the ball is thrown into the middle and you get to fight over it immediately. And now, from a graphical point of view, it is nice looking as such. It's very, very stylized, definitely. The quality of the graphics cannot be dismissed. I mean, you may like it or you may not like it, but the graphical quality is undeniably very, very good. The problem, of course, with the stylized graphics is if you don't like the style, you're not going to like the graphics. And in truth, on a personal level, I'm not the biggest fan of the graphical style. These are supposed to be humans, but for me, they look more like robots. Well, maybe not robots, but definitely androids. They are very, very mechanical in their movement and the way they look. Again, I'm not expecting hyper-realism from a game, especially not from a game from the early 90s. I was about to say 80s, but it was released in 94. So, but I know I'm not meant to take it seriously. It is a game and all that stuff, but beyond that, I just fail to take it seriously. The music, it's okay. I mean, it's got a bit of funkiness to it, but maybe not as dramatic as it could have been. But I like fast beats. I like very, very quick beats and very ponderous music, so to speak. So I would find these more quiet themes enjoyable, but maybe not something I would necessarily get out of my chair and start dancing the lacquer off the floorboards. The sound effects themselves are mainly bombs exploding, heads flying, people grunting, people being stomped on, things like that, and there is definitely a recognition of certain of the sound effects. I suppose the sound effect of someone falling can only be so varied from game to game, but there's definitely a certain recognition of some of the sound effects. I find the sound quality okay, but I find the sound mix a bit messy. It's a bit noisy. The old computers, of course, had limited sound channels and therefore limited sound options, but if you have a local band in a pub or club or whatever, it's usually 4 members. And the Amiga, of course, had 4 channels, so it would be no different from your local club band musically. But it just, for me, from an audio point of view, specifically sound effect point of view, it feels a bit too much like they've been trying to get as many sound effects going at the same time. And they would probably be more cool individually, but I find the soundscape to be a bit muddled and not particularly exciting. Now, the gameplay itself, Yeah, there's one game I have in mind, and I have already covered it, and I have to admit I am considering redoing some of the games I've already covered because I feel myself, I mean I could be wrong, but I feel myself that I have progressed as a content developer, I was supposed to say producer, and have become more confident in doing these voiceovers and that kind of stuff, and getting better at slowing my voice down so people can actually understand when I say, which is, I suppose, somewhat beneficial. But that game, of course, would be Speedball 2. Brutal Deluxe, I think it's called Deluxe. One of them. Both of them. I don't know. You pick. The ultimate in aggressive sports games, if you ask me. Does it require much more tactical gameplay than this? No. But it moves fast, it looks good, it sounds great, and it's epic to play. I wish I could say the same for this game. It feels like the computer, your computer opponents, are basically just one-tracking for the goal every single time. And magically they always seem to find the bonuses, buffs, whatever you would call them, that causes your players to be sent flying all over the place, and they just beeline straightly for the goal box. And honestly, it becomes rather boring. Remember, I did say some time ago that in this game specifically, I was just going to spam, and spam with spam, and more spam. If you get that reference, you can give yourself a point, if you want. In order to make these videos, I usually spend a bit of time with games in order to get used to them and learn how they play and learn how they behave, and not necessarily master them, but at least to showcase something that resembles somewhat pretentious skill. I don't know, whatever you call it. You can call it what you want. But to be honest, I never really felt the desire to do it with this game. The first game felt a bit okay. I need to get used to this, and the second game, spoiler, I get absolutely crushed. Which is hardly surprising when you're just spamming. But I could probably play 5, 10, 20, 60, 200 games more than I did in order to make myself look like I was the best brutal sports football player ever. But I felt no desire to do so. The game is not bad by any means. It's definitely not bad, but it's just not for me. Definitely not for me. I don't see the supposed humor in it. I don't see the supposed action in it. I don't see the supposed sport in it. I know it was sort of meant to be this completely bonkers, going absolutely crazy kind of adaptation of different sports, but you still have to enjoy playing them. The games. I mean, gameplay is king and all that stuff, and I don't know how it would be to play against another player. If you're good and he or she is not, then it'll probably be fun to crush them and take their heads and whatever, but I just didn't enjoy this one. It bored me. And again, I want to emphasize I can accept and respect and appreciate the qualities of the game as such, but the flow just feels wrong. The fact that you constantly tackle someone, send the ball forward, and then magically your opponent seems to have a player ready to jump into your face and tackle you. And even though all your players are alive and you only have control of one, your defenders seem to be on a picnic somewhere. Maybe it's just me. It's entirely possible it's just me, and get good and stop sucking and all that. I can appreciate that, and if there's someone out there who has played this game and played this game and loved it to bits and is an absolute joystick god with this game. You know what? Good on you. I'm not going to try and take that away from you or anyone else. My my point is to make commentaries of games, not to tell you what is right for you. But for me, it's just boring. The Speedball 2 is a reference. This is different. It looks different. It sounds different, but it's not a better game. Speedball 2, of course, is quite unique in the way that it's the pace is much quicker in this game. But basically, in Speedball 2, you pass the ball, tackle the guy who's stubborn enough to catch the ball, pass the ball to the next one, tackle him, do a high pass or a high throw at the goalie, hoping he's stupid enough to jump for the ball, and then he jumps for the ball, and you tackle him mid-air, and then you score. And you can, in that game, you can score in 4 seconds using that technique, which is not exactly the most tactical gameplay, but it's enjoyable. It's fun. It's not very fun with the computer crush you, and you have half your players needing medical attention, but it is fun when you do it to the computer, or even better, a friend. But we are not talking Speedball 2, we are talking brutal sports football, and I think I have said all I can say about this game. It's probably very enjoyable to some, and good on you. For me, it was just, forgettable. So on that very long note, I'm going to say thanks for watching, take care, and catch you next time. Bye for now.